Wonderful. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. I see Susan and Jackie and Janet. I see Nan and Rose and Thea and Joni and Madeline and Sharita. We've got a full webinar tonight. I'm Sara Kooperman. I'm the CEO of STW Fitness Education. I'm a little spacey tonight because, as you can see, I'm wearing a sleeveless shirt. I got my booster yesterday after we did Boston Mania. Why I killed myself over the weekend and then decided to get the booster, and kind of shuts you down a little bit. But I'm very excited tonight. We're going to be talking about building your backside. And I've got wonderful people that all presented for us at Boston Mania. Thank you, the three of you coming. I've got Summer Sides, and Summer has her master's degree, her CS. She's an RYT 200 yoga instructor. She is a professor of exercise science, founder of GX United, and creator of Counterflow Yoga. And over the past 20 years, she's taught almost all forms of group fitness. Really cool. She's owned a yoga studio and worked with companies such as NIDA, Les Mills, Ignite 360, and ACE. So she's very well respected in our industry, and I love to see a female professor. Not to put you down, Chris, but I do love my women in the room. Chris, we actually got to know each other over the pandemic. That was really one of so fun for me to get to know Chris. He's a practicing physical therapist for over 20 years with a very strong clinical background in orthopedics, sports injuries, spinal dysfunctions. He's been a personal trainer also for the same amount of time for 20 years. And he's also an international presenter. He's been doing this for about 15, and he's the founder of PinnacleTraining Consulting Systems. So we're going to ask, I'm going to ask Mike DeVello, who is so graciously running our webinar tonight after such a brutal weekend where we all worked so hard, if Mike DeVello would mind throwing that in the chat box. And then we've also got Gail Bannister-Munn, who I have to say, I grabbed her at Boston Mania because I've been so impressed with what she's done with professional athletes, and made her talk to my son, who's a D3 Division III hockey player in college. She's absolutely brilliant. She's a flexibility specialist, core yoga Pilates coach with the New York Jets football team. She's always out there on the field. And Gail teaches several different class formats at national conferences. And she's also a fitness consultant, not only for the NFL, but also for the NBA, NHL, MLB. If you guys don't know, that's like baseball, hockey, basketball, and all sorts of professional athletes. And she runs the Bannister method. So it's really kind of cool. We have 163 people who have registered for this webinar. So I expect we'll end up with about 60 or 70 to show up, and the other 100 or so probably will listen to the recording. But you guys are live. You guys are live, and we really appreciate you showing up. If you would move your mouse, and you can go down to where the green share button is, you go to the left of that, you're going to see the chat box. I love you people. You know what you've already done? You have already put your names in the chat box, and you've been able to make sure that you tell us where you're from. So I know we've got like one of our people can't hear, but it seems like everybody else can hear and the sound is good. Please put down where you're from. I see people from New Hampshire, Chicago, Pennsylvania, Madison, Wisconsin, Tennessee, Atlanta, Connecticut, Charlotte, California, Detroit, Michigan, Missouri, Massachusetts. I love this, Alabama. You know, the pandemic, frankly, has really sucked. Right? It's been devastating on our industry. We've lost a lot of group fitness instructors. It's been a heyday for personal training and small group training, but it really has actually put out of business 22% of our health clubs. That's 13,000 health clubs are not opening. So we are moving into becoming entrepreneurs, all of us. And our group fitness is moving into personal training, moving into that small group training. And I think it's very important for us to look at our backside. You know, you always want to see somebody coming, but you remember them when they're going. So progress is generally associated with moving forward. But what if this is leaving behind one of our most crucial components of a healthy body, which is our backside? So we're going to talk about the importance of the posterior chain and how to properly connect and train it. And I'm actually going to start with you, Gail. And how do you recommend that we coach our clients to properly engage and train their backsides? Not just their gluteals and their hamstrings, but their entire backsides.
I like when you say backside. I'm so old school. I'm thinking of the bump behind our back, but we have to think about the whole back. You know, Chris, as Chris had said before, we really want to make sure we have a flexible back and our back is geared to embrace any exercises that we are going to be doing for the back, including, like Summer had said, your traps, your rhomboids, your QLs, your erectors, all the way down to your piriformers. So I would start with flexibility and stretching. I love using bands to start with warm-ups, foam rolling, to get that going before you start with any kind of back work, and then you move on from there.
And if you're going to be doing the foam rolling, you know, how deep do we go into that foam rolling as a warm-up? How does that differ, let's say, from the flexibility that we might be focusing on when we use foam rolling?
Foam rolling is catchy. I always tell my clients, get on it for like 4 seconds and get off and wait for it, because the first swipe is always the most painful swipe. And then come off for like 5 seconds and get back on it again, and then keep doing that a couple more times and realize that it adjusted. But the other thing about foam rolling and soft tissue is that hydration is key to that. If you're dehydrated, you're feeling it more than somebody who is hydrated. So for somebody who's starting to foam roll, I always say, give it one big swipe really quickly, get off, take a breath, and then get back on again, give it another swipe, take another breath, and then you'll adjust to it. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get. But hydration is key to that. But foam rolling is not for everyone. So work with what you can that's comfortable for you. You can do lower back stretches, child poses, upward dogs, downward dogs, simple exercises that can. Bridges also help. Cross your knee over your right knee, roll to the right and left, opening up, you know, your QLs and your obliques to get that going if you're not a foam roller person. You can also use tennis balls as well and the glutes to open that up as well. So find something that works for you.
And Chris, you were the one that said, you know, we want to build our backside. No, it's all about the booty, right? But you did mention the importance of warming up and the flexibility component. Can you please share a little bit on that?
Yeah, speaking as a therapist, you know, I just saying to you earlier and to the audience now, I have a lot of patients I treat that have spinal issues like spinal stenosis and spondylosis. So there's a narrowing versus a degeneration. A lot of them have what? They're not very flexible, especially with hamstrings. They're like one gentleman I looked at, he was 35 degrees of hamstring flexibility on the left and 42 on the right. That's terrible. It should be about 90. So I think to really piggyback Gail's point, you want to work on mobility. So all these different, you know, knee to chest, hamstring stretches, IT band, across the body. I really do a lot of hands-on, but I think the big thing is what can the patient or the client do on their own? So whether it be foam rolling, I think Gail nailed it. I'm not a big foam roller. The research is kind of skewed. It's, you know, it's a trend. It's good. But what can you do in your toolbox? And I actually had these and Gail's already kind of talked about this just briefly. I had these at my event in Mania, but I have these little fascial balls, and there's a ton out there. You don't need to get these PVC pipes and wicked, really big, you know, stiff tools. You need something that's going to give and work on those areas. And warm-up should be, you know, brief, 5 to 10 minutes. and then obviously integrate, you know, what you're going to do. But we talked before about push versus pull. I think that's huge. Not all doing the push day, not all doing the pull day. Make sure you balance it out accordingly. So that's what I try to do with my clients and my patients.
And Summer, when you're thinking about training the back, I mean, obviously you're a yoga specialist. What are some of the things you do?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I come from a kind of diverse background because I've done yoga. I've also had the pleasure of working at IMG Academy with professional athletes. I've worked a lot with runners and cyclists in my career as well. So when you kind of look at the variations of everything, I also come from a Pilates background. So I like to find ways to blend all of that into working with a client and what they're going to bring to the table. But so much of it, I think we have to realize and recognize and look at people as people living in 21st century and the life that we're living of being so hunched over. And especially with my yoga background of thinking about traditional yoga poses being very forward folding, the more we can do to find that expansion and that chest opening, to Gail's and Chris's point, of the more mobile we can get to a point, because there is that balance between too much hypermobility, especially in yogis, that can become something where it's like, oh, look how much I can bend into my hamstrings, and my hamstrings are super flexy bendy, but then there's no stability in it. So I think so much of what I bring to the table and what I think about is we need to get this really good capability of getting people to stretch, to get people to mobilize from the neck to the feet, right? Everything along that back side of their body. So we're not only countering what's going on here, but we're strengthening from the fact that they're sitting all day on their glutes and their hamstrings are tight, because whether they're an athlete or whether they're a human walking around in life, those hamstrings just get so tight. So I think it's really focusing on what can we do to pull into our body? Can we expand and open and find that, versus just continuing to forward fold flex into our body?
It was interesting. I went to a session with Kelly Roberts, and you know, we all focus on the pull. And a lot of times, I think, Chris, you brought this up before we turned the camera on, but a lot of people just focus on that push. Like, I want to build my pecs. I want to build my pecs. And Kelly talked about doing the single arms, because sometimes we pull back and our posture is just horrid. And so if we can do a unilateral pullback, it really does help open. And I like what you brought up, Summer. I'm gonna show this screen just really quickly. You know, poses to protect the back. I did a workshop on back training at Mania. And the extreme forward flexion we want to watch for: spinal compression, rotating too early, extending too far. But the main thing is, it's these poses that just put us in these positions. And I think, Gail, you were the one that brought it up, said, oh my goodness, the headstands and these extreme forward folds that we do, and that we might want to think about doing more of these McKenzie method or the McKenzie extension exercises. That's so important for us to do. And that's, you know, working the back of the body. And I think, Gail, you brought it up, you know, we really want to work the back of the body. And these people do crazy, I was going to say a bad word. These people do crazy stuff. It was a different S word I was going to use. It freaks me out. Please, I want you to share that video, because that was just amazing.
So what we were talking about is that the new trend is building the booty. And I'm sure if you go on every TikTok, that's all you've seen. You've seen implants on booties. And it's just crazy, big bands and everything else. So this is a video. Where did I put it? Hang on before I share it. Let me just skip the screen for a second. And I'm not going to say where the club is, but I will share it. Sorry about that. There you go. And this is the video. So the question was, do you think this is necessary?
And the thing is, Gail, look at the amount of
Wait,
weight
right?
that person is lifting.
You can see her shoes, her neck. If you look at her collarbone, around the collarbone is strained in her neck. She's adjusting.
Can you center it just a little bit more, because we want to see her shoulders and her knees going way over her toes. That's great. Chris, can you comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying earlier, it just makes me cringe, only because, you know, it seems like it's an excellent, awesome exercise, but someone like myself, I have a grade 2 spondylolisthesis, so, you know, a little bit of instability. So
just to define this, spondylolisthesis
is a forward
basically
translation.
a thinning.
Nope, not a
Go
thinning,
ahead.
a forward translation. So basically instability or hypermobility. So if you have hypermobility and you're doing a load, right, in this weight up here, you're just causing a shear or a press that's going to go to the joint, which causes the joint to become more mobile. So that's the first thing. The second thing, you just nailed it. Gail said, and it's very clear that there's no support in her neck, there's no support in her shoulder, and she's using so much weight. So why are we doing that? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't see it being a very safe, effective, nor effective exercise in the interim, in the big picture.
I mean, and Gail, you've got to train these professional athletes, and they, you know, a lot of the power comes from the back and comes from the gluteals. So how do you effectively train your professional athletes if we're not going to do something extreme that throws us out of postural alignment?
I mean, it's funny. I mean, when I started with the Jets back in 2005, everything was the heavy squats, the heavy leg extensions, the prone leg curls. Chris, you know what I'm talking about. You put your machine, you kick the curls up. I would say in 2010, when the rope started to come in and the functional training came in, they started changing up real quick. So now it's more of slow pushing sledges across the field, very determined purpose form, you know, weighted kettlebells. They're actually less weight. If they do a heavy day, it's usually pre-season, before season. But once the season starts, it's all functional. It's all walking lunges. It's more mobility, more rotations, transverse planes, because they want to keep them active. But they don't do that anymore. I just think a lot of people think that, you know, they're athletes, we have to squat them over 500 pounds. That is the old way of training. Now the new way is definitely more functional. You know, if you go out, if you come on a football field right now, we have about 30 hurdles lined up across the field for hip mobility, to walk over hip mobility, to duck on the knee, just to kind of strengthen their back. You know, simple exercises just to strengthen their back. It's just like, I'm amazed at how it has changed so much in a good way. And that's why you see, I mean, I just read a tweet, and it's really that, you know, we have less injuries this year than we had in the last past years, because we're definitely doing more mobility exercises. We have ways of correcting them. We have leg extension machines that can tell you how strong the hamstrings are versus how weak they are, to be able to build up on that, to work on that. So we have all these things in parameter, but it's just fascinating that people are still training with these heavy weights just to get, like you said, a bigger back or a booty back, you know, and it's not that way anymore.
Summer, what are you seeing?
Yeah, and I think I had a couple follow-ups with Gail's comments there, because I think she's so spot on with the trend and how we've evolved. And I feel like in sport, we've seen such a great evolution, and the athletes and the trainers have seen it. And then in our consumers and our general population, I feel like we sometimes drift back to where we were like 10, 15 years ago in sport. And you know, being at IMG Academy, one of the things that we really emphasized with athletes was balance. and how much can you focus in on gaining balance and as your foundation. And before you ever go lift any type of heavy weight, are you able to do a single leg RDL without weight? Can you do something like that before you even consider doing something like a heavy weighted deadlift? And I think,
if you don't mind, what's a heavy weighted RDL?
Sorry, an RDL, Russian. Russian deadlift, so single leg, so going down with like a single leg.
The balance challenge.
Yeah, exactly. It's a balance challenge for it. And in the yoga world, it would be something similar to doing like
Half moon.
Half moon, a warrior 3, an airplane. And I think the thing that's really great is that we can really work that posterior chain by doing balance challenge exercises just like that. And when we start to put that into our group fitness space and we try to get the average participant to recognizing that some of these, what I oftentimes refer to as like the sexy fun exercises that you see in yoga poses all over Instagram or on TikTok or whatever you're seeing, sometimes just like that video Gail just showed, aren't necessarily the safest, most effective, but they are what will grab likes and attention. And I think that we as the professionals out there just need to continue doing everything we can to empower and encourage people to recognize, like, all because you can do that, does that mean you should be doing that? Because to Chris's point, like all the excess load that's putting on the body in a way that's just going to cause injury. And I think that that's what, as group fitness professionals and as personal trainers, we have to think so much about of what is our end goal, and are we wanting to keep people safe and everything that we're doing. So let's really focus on how can we do things that are without weight that could almost be more beneficial, to Gail's point of things like stepping over a hurdle can be more beneficial to that client than doing that heavy hip thrusting exercise.
Yeah, and I really like you bringing it up, that how do we apply this in a group exercise setting, a small group setting? What do we do with our weekend warriors and our clients? There's a question, Judy, it's not really a question, she just brought this up. There is the risk for forward bends in seniors and those with osteopenia and osteoporosis. And she wrote that it's dangerous. Chris, what do you think about our older adults with the forward bends, possibly with, maybe even lighter weights? What are you thinking about that? And also, I do want to ask you guys about bands, because bands seem to be what a lot of athletes are using now. And I'm wondering, they're an inexpensive tool that we can also integrate. So first it's about forward flexion with seniors, and then I'm going to hit you up for bands.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that I see in my patients in 20 years, Sara, is, a lot of them, to what the panel has already addressed and brought up, is they're in thoracic kyphosis. They're really rounded as a whole. So tight pecs, forehead, and, they're thoracic. Can I change that thoracic? And the answer is really no, I can't change it completely. I can improve the mobility, but I'm not going to mobilize someone who's in their 70s and 80s. But if I meet someone who's younger, I may do that or even manipulate with consent, but it's not appropriate to do that to an older senior. And if they have a history of osteoporosis or osteopenia, from just a physics loading, that's what we want to stay away from. We want to stay away from loading that neck and loading that spine. And I think the forward flexion, I mean, you nailed it earlier and said earlier, our ligaments, our joints, everything is being distended if we're in downward dog and doing these flexing at the time. We're sitting at our desk right now, like you're doing, and sitting all day. I'm up treating, we're getting compression to our disc, the lack of oxygen and blood to our muscles. So we need to be upright. That's why I think someone said she had a stand-up desk, which is a good balance.
Someone's standing up.
Yeah, it's a good balance act. So I think it's a balancing, and as my father said, it's all about balance. It's about balance in work and play. It's balance between the flexors and extensors in that 2-to-1 ratio, more work in those extensors and less on the flexors.
Interesting. And Gail, you're obviously a big proponent of that. And I think you also, when we were on a panel on strength and stretch, I think you brought up some different training techniques that you work with your professional athletes.
Remind me, because
Remind you.
well,
Well,
I do it like, I'm like Chris in a lot of ways. I use my hands a lot. I need to feel the fascia and soft tissue, but I also do Thai massage. I also do a lot of ball work with different sizes of balls, which I was talking to Sean about. With marbles, I use marbles, golf balls, lacrosse balls, tennis balls are my favorite. Softballs, which gets into the pure form, it depends on the size of the person, or baseballs. Those are actually my favorite toys to use. But you know, everybody's different. You have to, you know, like I was talking to somebody about the hypervolt and the other piece of equipment. It's like, you know, everybody goes to the point where it hurts. Like, oh, it hurts right here. So they take the hypervolt and goes right there. And that's not the spot. We need to find where it started. This is the end result, to figure out where it is to work it out. And don't get me wrong, hypervolts are a great tool. I have a couple of them. We just got to be able to apply them properly and use them beneficial for the need of the client.
okay.
But you have to remember what I said. I do like using bands. I'm a band girl. I like using bands for rehabbing shoulders and, you know, mobility and rotations a lot. I have a lot of tennis players too. So bands for upper body is amazing for rotation and the hand movements and, you know, lateral movements and flexion. So
And Jamie just put a comment in here. A lot of the time you can get and a very effective and challenging workout with a slightly lighter weight in conjunction with doing the reps at a slower tempo. So, you know, so that you can light your muscles ablaze and give them a great burn, blah, blah, blah. But what do you think of moving slower? Because obviously we're a little concerned with extreme weight loads. Summer, do you ever do a slower tempo with the moves? Do you focus on the eccentric rather than the concentric? Are there different techniques you integrate?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think coming from the group fitness space, the yoga space, and having taught group fitness and the joys of using the music, and we know sometimes that a 4/4 tempo can be so much harder than doing the fast reps up and down, right? And I think that sometimes those people who aren't necessarily group fitness counting it to the music type of people don't recognize the value that it can have when you just slow down and really, really focus in, like you mentioned, on that eccentric load, because it really does. The time you're under tension can sometimes bring in so much more value than speed. Now, is there time and place for speed? Absolutely, especially with certain athletes, certain different things that you're working on. But there's also that point in time when it's just slowing down and sometimes taking time to slowly rotate into a stretch, if you think about it from the yoga perspective in the yoga world. And, you know, I was thinking about it with bands. I am normally hanging, so as they all said, I'm at a standing desk right now. Hanging over the back of this chair is normally my band that I have that I can just do sitting here at my desk to open up my shoulders, because I get really tight standing here. And I think that's one of the benefits that sometimes people don't think about with bands is they're so accessible, they're so cheap, and they're so easy to just be able to do, whether you're at home, whether you're in a group fitness setting. You know, it's expensive to buy lots of equipment in a group fitness setting, but you can buy bands relatively cheap and be able to have all your participants doing them. And so I think if we slow it down, and you can slow down using bands in a way that's like, oh dear goodness, my booty is on fire more than I ever can do lifting and squatting heavy weights, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask Mike DeVello, can you put in the links to our product store for the bands that we have? We bought these bands, they're awesome, and we're doing a 50% off which is really nice because it's great. You can buy them for your, for your clients as a stocking stuffer, whatever you guys want to do. So
I think
it's
it's
kind of
already
nice.
I think it's already in the chat.
Pardon me?
I think he has it in the chat already.
Oh, he does have it in the chat? Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
It
Yeah,
says
he
it's
put it
fine
in
with
the
the side,
store.
yeah.
Thank you, Mike. How can we identify pain in our client's posterior change that we might, and what might be causing it? So I know that's very
Chris?
broad, Chris,
Yeah.
but we get, clients experience pain. Everybody experiences pain at one time or another. They say 70 to 80% of the public will experience back pain. And they just think they can buy a new mattress or buy a new pillow or sadly take a pill and it's gone. But how do we identify where it's coming from? Are there common things that people are doing? How can we help our clients? We have to watch ourselves that we aren't physical therapists as group fitness instructors or personal trainers, but what are some of the things we can do to persuade them not to do certain things?
Well, first point, I think the key thing is that I hear it's a misconception and wrong is about pain is that people put heat on it. Number one, that's the worst thing you can do. So if you are in pain, whether it be a little bit of pain, a lot of pain, medium pain, ice, 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 leave that 3 days and rest. And the other thing too, I could talk about an hour on pain, which I'm not going to do, Sarah, but there's a lot of different types of pain. But you have mechanical pain, you have neurogenic pain, and chemical pain. Most people, like in our audience here, probably have tightness in our traps or their traps, and they probably have tightness in their glutes and other areas. So that's more mechanical, where something's caused it, and you can change it by stretching, by heating it up, or by doing some kind of, ISTM or percussion or massage. The massage therapists out there, I'm married to one, she doesn't practice anymore. They're wonderful. They are worth their weight in gold. But the key,
you're married to one.
I am, well,
you hit the jackpot.
I am, but she doesn't practice. Yeah, so I'm lucky, but I give more massage to her than I get. Anyways, the point being is, to answer the question, yeah, exactly. It's about the quality. Where is the pain? Tell me some symptoms. Tell me some. If you were talking to me, Sarah, where is it? What's going on? What makes it better? What makes it worse? And then really trying to neutralize it by resting it and icing it. And after 3 days, then using the heat, then using stretching and some kind of mobilization. But you don't start using your trigger point, or not trigger point, your percussion gun, and like Gail said, and just under that spot, because you're going to do what? You're going to irritate those nociceptors. So it's all about listening to the body, trying to do some triaging, and then integrate heat with stretching, mobility, exercise. And if it doesn't go away, see a chiropractor, see a physio, see a massage therapist, get something to be evaluated on, and then get your help. Don't try to just do it on your own and just suck it up and get more pain.
And as soon, we're asked everything. As the group fitness instructor, the yoga teacher, the strength training coach, we aren't physical therapists. We aren't nurses. We aren't, okay, Summer, you're an exercise physiologist or an exercise, we have to look at this. And if you, and speaking as a lawyer, I actually am one, I don't just play one on webinars, is saying, as a fitness professional, I'm not a doctor, nurse, or physical therapist, but I might recommend you really focus on ice. If it persists after the 3 days, please go see a physician or some other type of, medical caregiver. Gail, you see injuries all the time. I mean, you have to see injuries all the time. And it's because it's a violent activity, like when you're doing the jets, right? So are you on board with what Chris says, or?
I mean, for me, anytime anything hurts, go ice it, talk to me tomorrow. Go ice it, talk to me tomorrow. That's the first thing out of my mouth. I'm usually the person says, like, I have a lot of runners that'll be like, oh, this hurts. Does it hurt? Yes. Okay. Rest, ice, call me in 48 hours. Let me know how you feel. And then they're like, oh, but you can fix it. No, I can't fix it. You just relax. You've been running every single day. Take a rest. It's okay. But yeah, our main thing is ice. We have every single, the routine, Chris will tell you, is we ice it, we heat it, we stem it, we treat it, we repeat it until they're done at the end of the day. It's a constant thing, but everything is ice. I mean, we have every single ice machine we have in it. We have like 20 game ready to go. We have every single one. If we use heat, is to heat up the area we just ice to retreat again, to start all over again, the whole process again.
Because it kind of flushes the muscle out. It'll be,
we have
filled with blood, and then when you ice
tubs,
it pushes it out. Then it fills up. So inflammation is not necessarily bad. It's not a bad thing.
No.
But you have to use it effectively, and then help the body repair itself.
But
the
Sara,
only thing I think Chris will agree with, the only thing about ice is when you do get the results from it, people go, oh, it feels better, I'm going to stop. No, don't stop. Stay on it for another 6 to 7 days and continue the treatment. Don't just stop because it feels better for that moment. You still have to continue that treatment until you completely, I would say 7 to 8 days, and then you can ease off of it a little bit more. I think people just get the immediate release and they think, okay, we're good, I'm back on it again, versus just take a step back, continue to ice, take time off, and then come back to it.
And Chris, you were just about to say something.
No, I was just going to say, to Gail's point, she's spot on, is to avoid loading it. So, a squat, closed connection exercise where you're loading it, that's what you don't want to do, because everything's ticked off. It's irritated. So if you load the ankle or load the knee or load the hip, you're stimulating mechanoreceptors and nociceptors, all those little gooey things that sense things and regulate pain to do what? More pain. So you're creating a cycle that just goes on and on. And now with Gail, with the Jets, I mean, that's awesome work with these athletes. These guys and these athletes are getting therapy probably a couple times a day. You and I, as non-professional athletes, are probably getting therapy a couple times a week. So they're going to facilitate faster, especially with Game Ready, which we use are awesome. So you're dealing with a different clientele, which I'm in awe. I'm jealous that, professional athletes, they're wonderful, or athletes, but it's that holding, like she said, kind of that harness, like, okay, don't sprint now. I want you to creep, cruise, walk, and then eventually run. And that's the hard part that men, because I'm the only one on the panel that's a man here, we're hard-headed, and we do stupid things, and we do get injured, and we need to listen to the experts. So
I like you even more now. I just do. I can't help myself. All right, Summer, you're like, I can see you chomping at the bit. Please.
Go some there.
No, I was thinking as everyone's been talking, but one of the things that as fitness professionals, I think we don't always take all our advice ourselves. As a person who has had 5 orthopedic surgeries and more injuries than I can begin to count because of just overuse as a fitness professional, I think sometimes it's important, us group fitness instructors out there who are maybe teaching all these classes, to recognize exactly what Gail and Chris were saying. When we're feeling a little bit of pain, get ourselves out there and get some ice, or be willing to go seek treatment, because it can be so difficult for us to take our own advice about pain and injury, and especially when it's something like a hamstring, or I can remember once I was teaching a cycle class and I stood up too fast and I felt the pop in my hamstring. And what did I do? I kept cycling and I kept going, and I got off the bike after the 45-minute class, and I'm like, oh dear goodness, that did not feel real great. So what did I do? I had to go home and teach a cycle class the next day. And so I think that it's just such an important part for us to have that conversation of, we tell everyone this really well. And to Sara's point earlier about being a lawyer, we can't diagnose them. We don't do that in our group fitness setting. We refer them and refer ourselves to those same people we refer to.
And we also, you're a yoga instructor, I'm a yoga instructor. We get people in our classes who think that yoga is going to repair them.
Right.
or it's recovery. And yoga can be very, very strenuous. My husband's got a bad back, and if we keep going to yoga regularly, with the stretching that he's able to do, he still does his cardio, he still does his strength training, but if we can add the yoga twice a week, the flexibility is really helping his back, which is wonderful to see. What other things can we do that can help us hypertrophy our posterior? Because I'm sorry, it's the J-Lo butt. We all want it. It's
That's
great.
genetics. That's just plain
Kardashians
genetics.
screwed this whole thing up for me.
That's
I
plain
spent
genetics on
years
that
trying to limit my butt, and now I'm whatever.
I was in the gym the other day, and in the locker room, there's two girls standing on the benches with the mirror in front of them with their camera in the J-Lo booty. Like, what do I need to do? How do I get it there? They're like, is it bigger than it was yesterday? The whole conversation was so amusing to just sit and listen to. I didn't want to leave the locker room just to see where they were going. But it's an important question as well.
I just think in the last 2 years, the whole, probably more than that, the whole butt thing has blown up. And the thin of, Chris, the corset waist, everybody's buying these corsets to thin the waist, to get the hips to get wider, to make the visual of the butt. And I have a friend who is a physical therapist. He says, oh, I'm making big money. You know how many ribs are broken and sprained from those corsets? I'm making a killing right now. I said, get out. He goes, oh, bottom rib, he's going through the whole thing. I said, no way. He goes, sprained ribs, Gail, black and blue, some are broken from these corsets just to pull it in. I'm like, were we going back to Queen, Queen, he said, pretty much. So,
oh my goodness.
People are, they
seen that
can't
one
get
yet,
it,
Gail,
they're
so
doing
that's a
it
new
that
one.
way.
Yeah.
That's
a new
sorry.
one. I haven't seen that yet. So
Never
that's
seen that, Chris. Hang on,
Not
Chris.
yet.
Come to New York City. It's all
I know.
over.
I'm in Mass, so I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure it'll be on its way.
Ah.
Yeah.
And I do like how Susan commented, nah, I definitely don't want a J-Lo butt. I'm like, you know what, Susan, it's not like I really want a J-Lo butt. I just want my 60-year-old butt to be about 55. I'd be pretty happy with it.
You'll be
I
happy.
just want to, and what are, I hear bands, I hear doing like some prone exercises where we arch and we lift to work the back of the body. These are some of the exercises that we can do. What other exercises can we do to properly coach the back? Summer, what are some of the things you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're really thinking like glutes, and if we're really thinking like good glute booty, I mean, you can never go wrong with a good squat, right? Like you can do squats with so many different things, with the bands, with weights, with a stability ball. I mean, you can do so many things. So I'm never going to go wrong with a good squat. I also love me a good deadlift. And I think that deadlifts can sometimes get a bad rap because improper form and rounding too much. But when you can properly really activate those hamstrings and glutes with a good hip hinge, whether you're using a barbell, a kettlebell, or something like that, they're great. I am, as a personal person, I love kettlebells. So everything that I do in my own personal strength training world comes from kettlebells. So swings, squats, deadlifts, all with a kettlebell. And those single leg ones, I think the more we can do single legged versus double legged, whether it's a single leg squat, single leg deadlift, single leg hinge, whatever you're doing, the more of that, the better is going to be able to find those imbalances between the two sides as well. Okay. Plus, there's a lot of just like fun body weight stuff you can do where you're like transitioning from one move to the other. If you're thinking a lot more like functional movement and animal type movement patterns and such as well.
What kind, what do you think of, Judy asked, what do you think of using a weighted vest Gail, do you ever do that? Or Chris, do you ever do that?
I use, because I'm going into surgery, I've been doing I've been walking with, oh God, what's that company? The Rock, I think. And it's a backpack with a 5-pound, but that's just strictly for me to strengthen my legs for walking. It's not for me to build my booty. It's more for me to strengthen my legs. And I don't walk for more than a half a mile and then come back and then take it off and then do without it. But I warm up first before I put it on. It's not about running with it. It's not like, you ever see the firemen who are in training and the NYPD who are training, they put on a vest. Do I agree with it? Verdict is still out for me on that one.
And what about Larson just asked, what about walking lunges?
I love walking lunges.
Okay.
And I love walking lunges slow, with depth, with not heavy weights, but nice even weights and controlled. That's my favorite go-to. And my other favorite go-to is wall squats on a physio ball. It's put a ball behind. That's my favorite go-to things.
And they had, add to Gail's point. I mean, I spoke at Mania this weekend, and I actually love walking lunges, but then rotational. But I'll add multi-directional. So I'll add their band. I actually had a couple of the attendees do this band, resisted band lateral, pulling to the outside or lateral, and they were doing good. Then I had them in a half roll, going just straight down, 1 foot on a half roll, trying to maintain their center, and then doing two bands, 2 lines of force, and just holding it. And you can see how much we need not just static balance and control with dynamic, but really a real rhythmic and dynamic balance. But my approach to complement the panel's discussion is I just make it patient specific. I don't use weighted vest, Sarah. I wish I did. I wish I had some athletes. I don't have any athletes. Mine are older, not old, but older. And I think it's got to be patient specific. But I actually, backing up a step, I really work on the core first. I strengthen the TVA. I work on multifidus, get the QL more flexible, strengthen the QL, and then work on the booty, work on the glute max and glute med. But that's me. And I just believe everything comes from the core and from center. I learned in Australia, and then we go peripherally. That's just me. But that's my approach that I've been doing.
Great.
Yeah.
I can't even believe this. I'm looking at this and we're already out of time. I'm going to share with you a video I've had, which I think is so wonderful. We actually are seeing that we're slowly coming back alive as an industry, live. So here we go. I find this so encouraging that we're coming back live, that people want to go to our centers. People want to train with us. People want us to teach them. And I have to thank you, Gail. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Summer. You guys are excellent. Mike DeBello, thank you for running the webinar tonight. And thank you all for joining us. I'm Sara Kooperman from SCW. And I hope to see you at a Mania that's coming up in 2022. Take care and happy holidays, everybody. See you next Tuesday.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, guys.
Happy holidays.